few to go through here with you. So here we have the bride and the groom. I'm supposing that this is the governor, I'm not sure. And here we have Christ and perhaps the mother of Jesus here. But you'll notice that Jesus here is talking with who I'm presuming to be the head steward. The head steward here, okay? And here we have, if you heard the text, the jars that were there for purification purposes. And so they're following the instruction of Jesus, right? I like the way this is. You'll notice here that this is the water and how the miracle hasn't happened yet, but it's on its way. And so that is Murillo, another Italian painter. Just to show you that this is interpreted in other cultures. This is Japanese. Sadeo is or he's no longer with us, as you can see. I'm not sure when this was done. But here we have the marriage at Cana again. And here's the water. As you can see over here, a little further away here, but there's the water being poured. But as I tried to understand this, I think the entire text is being displayed here among other things. So here's, the bride and the groom. And I think he's being told there, you're running out of wine, which is never a good thing. And so this would, I presume, to be the mother of Jesus talking to Christ, and she's saying, they're out of wine. You need to do something. And so here they are. They're pouring it. And you'll see the loaves and the fishes represented there, from what I can see. But this was a sumptuous feast because, as you can see, they're serving lobster. But this is through the eyes of another culture, okay? And this is the way they would perceive that as a feast. Now, this is from Haiti. This is on the wall. It's a mural. It's on the wall of the Anglican Cathedral in Port-au-Prince in Haiti. And so another culture looking at this. So we see here's the couple being married. I presume this is Mary and this is Christ, and giving instruction and pouring the water. Now you really have to work at this one. Veronese. Now, 3 years ago this month, I was in Paris for a research group, and I did take in some of the Louvre. It's huge, and I remember seeing this painting. This painting is 732 square feet, the canvas. It takes up an entire end wall in these huge halls that are the Louvre. And when you come upon it from another part and you move into this hall, it takes you in. It's just immense and beautiful. You just stand there and you are amazed, absolutely amazed. There's an awful lot going on there, and you can tell that, the architecture here is certainly not Cana, but nonetheless, that's what it is. So here we have, but the interesting part about this one is that here we have, here's Christ, presumably sitting with his mother Mary. But the miracle in this one, it has already happened, because the liquid coming out of here is red. And so this is someone who's looking at this and going, oh my goodness, this is really good. But a servant has taken, I presume this is the governor here, and beside him would be the bride and groom, and he's being given some to be tasted. These are beautiful, is that me? Beautiful works of art. Okay? I do as I'm told sometimes. But this is the one that I want to spend just the last one. This is Winifred Nights. This was painted in 1923. People are still looking to the gospel stories in their painting. And this is rather neat, because you'll notice here that she is only Jesus, who is right here, and the servants are dressed in traditional garb. Everyone else is wearing clothing of the day. And the human figure here of Christ, he doesn't have the traditional glow around the head. But the people are wearing cardigans and turtleneck sweaters and waistcoats and what have you. Now, and they're being served watermelon. Now, this doesn't mean that it was a low-budget wedding. But if we go back here, if you can look closely here, this is what they're being served, because the main meal has already passed, and they're being served fruit and things of that nature. So this is what she has done here. So she has chosen watermelon. Chances are because she was studying in Rome at the time, and in the summers, large barrels with ice and watermelon. And so, let me see. And another interesting part of this is you'll notice everyone's attention is on Christ, and no one is talking. No one. No one is speaking. They are totally enthralled in this. And lastly, Piero della Francesca, who I showed you last week. I said he was Spanish. He's not. He's Italian. Faux pas on my part. But she was quite influenced by him. But in a lot of the paintings that they had, the masters during the Renaissance, they would often have like a coral necklace and beads, which represented like the tears of Christ or things of that nature. But this one, we presume this is Mary because hers is red, and the commentators say representing the blood of Christ. So that's a little walkthrough of what some of the artists of olden times and contemporary times, 20th century, as we look at this. So you're going to find that I like to look at art because it says a lot, and it gives us a visual image of what we're going to be talking about here this morning. This is where Cana is, not far from the Sea of Galilee, about 10 miles north of Nazareth, and that's what Cana looks like today, which is it's a beautiful. Never been there. I'd love to go, but a beautiful part of the world. Am I going to have trouble if I get up here? Okay. So we see that Christ's ministry, it's a blissful setting of great joy and abundance in the seemingly insignificant village of Cana. But it holds a secret of the person of Christ and the reason for his coming. So it is a sort of an entrance, as we look at the gospel, on which we find ourselves, and expressions that illuminate the mystery of the Son of God and how that the disciples at this point are introduced to faith. So by initiating his public ministry in the wedding of Cana, Jesus reveals himself as the spouse of the people of God. We often refer to ourselves as the bride of Christ, and you hear that in the epistles. So this first miracle in John refers to them as a sign. But just to look at this from an exegetical perspective, just for a few moments, chapters 2 through 4 of John use the village of Cana as bookends to the larger narrative block that we read in the first 2 to 4 chapters. Jesus turns the water into wine. That's ours today. And then his body is the new temple, chapter 2. He challenges Nicodemus in chapter 3 to be born from above. And then the living water to the unnamed woman at the well, the Samaritan woman. And then he returns to Cana to give life to the son of a royal official. So Cana serves as kind of bookends to the chapters 2 and 4. So there are a lot of symbols that we find in all of these. The water, the temple, the wind, the birth, and the old wells are given new meaning as Jesus proclaims his life-giving powers. But there's more symbolism in this chapter. The third day. You'll notice that it was, in the reading, it was the third day when they began to run out of wine. And so this looks at the third day of the resurrection. So that becomes an important piece of this study. And then there is the 6 empty ritual jars. Now, these jars, as it was said, they were used for purification purposes. In Judaism, that was part of the ritual before prayer. In other places, during their day, they would have to use the ritual water to cleanse themselves. And so these jars that we saw in the paintings signify the wine. Now, this is a little lengthy, but this is what one commentator said: "What is necessary to live but wine expresses the abundance of the banquet and the joy of celebration. Transforming into wine the water in the jars used for the purification rites of the Jews, Jesus makes an eloquent sign, that of the transformation of the law of Moses into the gospel, the bearer of joy." So we find that in this gospel, we find extravagant abundance. Extravagant abundance. As it characterizes this miracle, abundance is both in the wine, it is outstanding in its quality, and also it is produced in an astonishing quantity. This wine that Jesus produces. They say somewhere between 120 and 180 gallons that the jars would have. I would think that would be sufficient. These weddings go on for a week, okay, in that culture. So, and at that time. So when we look at this, we see how that this, the God that Jesus revealed isn't a stern and stingy God. He's a God of lavish liberality, generosity, and extravagance. And he is like a manager who pays a worker a full day's wages for 1 hour of work. You remember that in the Gospels. He's the God who asked Jonah if he's angry because he is generous to the pagan Ninevites. There's another one. Whoops. It's not there. Okay, I'll carry on. Have you seen this? Babette's Feast. Have you ever seen that movie? Babette's Feast won the Oscar in 1988 for the best foreign film. If you haven't seen this, get it, rent it, find it, watch it. I've seen it a number of times. It's just a tremendous, tremendous story. Let me just talk about it for a moment because it speaks to abundance. Babette's Feast. It was a Danish film, and takes place in a village, a small village, along the dreary Jutland coast of Denmark. So it's in Danish, but it has subtitles. And 2 sisters in this story have given up their own ambitions to care for their father, an elderly pastor of a stern and tiny church in Denmark. So here are the 2 sisters with parishioners. Now the band of dour Christians learns the meaning of God's extravagance from a most unlikely source when a French refugee named Babette invades their small world. She becomes quite an important figure in all of this. And what happens here is that a famous general is to come to dinner at this small town because he was known to these 2 sisters. And they lived very meagerly. They had very little. Babette, unbeknownst to them, was a celebrated chef from Paris who, for one reason or another, had left Paris because of trouble. One thing that she did do before she left, she bought a lottery ticket. I'm not telling you to go buy lottery tickets. She bought a lottery ticket and she won. And the money came to her in this tiny Danish village. And so she said, well, what I'm going to do, because these two sisters had taken her in, I'm going to prepare for them a feast for when this general comes. Well, it's quite remarkable. Quite remarkable. And so that's what indeed she does. She prepares this sumptuous feast. They had never seen food. We probably had never seen food like this. And I was watching the trailer the other day, and these were teetotalers, okay? And this lady takes a drink. She goes, oh, that must be some kind of lemonade. And because she bought the best wine. I mean, everything was done. So this was a highly symbolic act of this famous chef in Paris as she cooks these villagers a sumptuous feast like they've never had before. Well, the general had. And the general had known of her, and by the end of it, he figures out that's who she really is. This famous chef from Paris that disappeared. And so, but it's interesting because these staid villagers, they couldn't allow themselves to enjoy such extravagance. And it starts out that they don't quite know what to do, and they're holding back. But by the end of it, they are really enjoying themselves. They begin to loosen up and celebrate, and to celebrate the excess and the abundance. So Jesus wasn't any kind of street magician or busker doing tricks to wow curiosity seekers, nor were his miracles merely missions of mercy or demonstrations of God's compassion for human suffering, but rather to understand his miracles meant to exercise faith in him who had performed them. His signs and wonders, works and healings forced a decision one way or another. And this last quote, believe the miracles that you may learn and understand that the Father is in me and I in the Father. Believe me when I say that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. Or at least believe in the evidence of the miracles themselves. So at this first sumptuous wedding feast and this first miraculous sign of Christ, it reveals the character of an extravagantly generous God. That's what you should take from this. And contrary to our contemporary hubris and condescension toward people of the past, that's no more unbelievable today than it was back then. To be sure, it was and is very strong wine. So let's take these lessons from this beautiful first miracle of Christ, and let's embrace the extravagance and the abundance of God as God comes to us, as we reach out to God to embrace that fullness, for that is what God intends for each one of us. Lord, as we continue before you here, we thank you for your word that continues to show us new realities about you. We thank you for your abundance and the extravagance and the grace that makes all of that possible for each one of us. So bless us, we pray. In your name we ask it. Amen.